So there's nothing worse than for a young beekeeper when you come home from work and you look up in a tree and there's $200 worth of bees sitting up in a tree.
Oh, jeez.
Because they swarmed out of your hive.
Yeah.
What's up, everybody? My name is Adam, and I'm the host of the UKnowAdamTsang podcast, the show that is dedicated on bringing on passionate people, learning about their stories, and delivering value to entrepreneurs. So if that's what you're interested in, go ahead and follow, like, and subscribe. You know what I'm saying?
How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the UKnowAdamTsang podcast, where you get to know just a little bit more about people, passions, and all things business. Today, I am sitting with DiNello of the Bee's Knees.
That's us.
Which is the perfect name.
Yeah, that's right.
For a honey company that is doing business.
That's right.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. So just wanted to talk to you about kind of like the different things you got going on right now. We've met you, I met you kind of like, through some other businesses that, we've done before. And I did not know that you were involved with honey until pretty recently, probably about a year or 2 years ago. I saw you at Work in a Market, peddling the wares, if you will. And we've developed kind of like this really great relationship, trying to figure out, business and growth and that sort of thing. And wanted to bring you onto the show, and finally we're here.
That's right.
So for the viewers that are listening in and that don't know about Bee's Knees, Bee's Knees, tell me about what the company does.
So initially when we started, it was backyard beehive installations. So for those who don't know, beekeeping is an exceptionally expensive hobby. And me having a sales business background, and when I went to my accountant to see if there were any tax write-offs for my small hobby, and it said, unless you're selling something, obviously no tax write-offs. So I said, well, we got to change that. So with beekeeping, unless you have lots of hives and produce lots of honey or sell lots of bees or do lots of pollination jobs, that's really your avenue to make money with bees. When you're first starting out, you're not big enough to venture into those different areas. So I said, well, let's come up with something to generate income for our hobby. And it was backyard beehives. So we would approach people that wanted beehives but were scared of them, didn't want to have to invest the time or the knowledge, and it's like a lawn care service. We would set the beehives up, they paid for them, those bees were theirs, the boxes, and whatever honey they produced was theirs. It was a zero-touch beehive.
Wow.
And went gangbusters. And it was a way for me to fund the business without going to a bank and going, hey, I'd like to be a beekeeper and I need $30,000, So we were able to self-fund it through.
How many of these services did you end up kind of like getting out there into the? So
initially, within the first 2 years, we had 25 or 30.
Wow.
It was fast. But it got too big. And as our apiary, which apiary is a bee farm, as our personal apiary grew, you didn't have time to service those customers. And then a few years into it, I shaved off half of the customers and gave them to another beekeeper for him to use my model to start his business. Right. And so now we don't do as much backyard installation as we used to. We still have a few customers that are grandfathered in, but they're close by. They're here in Bullitt County. And
so are there a lot of people that have bees in their backyard?
There are. You'd be surprised at the people that have 2 or 3 hives and have had them for years. More surprising is the people who've grown up, like when they were kids, their parents or their grandparents had bees. That the older generation, most everybody around in this area was very familiar with bees. It's not as common as it used to be because it's very labor intensive and costly. But it's a good escape hobby.
So let's venture down this rabbit hole of bees, right?
Yeah.
When you say expensive, like what is startup cost for a beehive range?
Like for me, I started with 4 beehives in 2015, and I had $2,000 plus into it right off the bat. I mean, it was, with suit and extractor and bees and equipment, and it was,
It's a pretty penny for
hobby,
some honey.
For a hobby. It's cheaper than a lot of other hobbies like fishing or golfing.
Sure.
But to sell my wife on the idea of, hey, I want to be a beekeeper.
Was she about it?
She was okay with it. And then honestly, the thing that's been the most hard to balance is having a full-time job, kids, and a hobby business, which the business is got its own legs now. And I actually brought on another beekeeper a couple years ago, so there's actually two of us that are the bee's knees, actually beekeepers. Now it's definitely a family thing. It's everybody has their part. Initially, when I started the business, I had 2 elementary school, middle school kids, and my idea was this could be theirs because I envisioned what the business could be.
Sure.
And I was thinking about them when they became teenagers, that they could have a weekend job because you could do your beekeeping on the weekends. And they wouldn't have to do what I had to do and start in a restaurant. And,
that's right.
Cut your teeth, washing dishes, and and I was thinking they could just do this, and but they got stung one time, and that was the end of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they still help out with festivals and bottling honey, but the beekeeping part, they don't know into it. Yeah. So
yeah.
So that's where the business evolved, and as we've grown, we're primarily a festival honey apiary now. We don't really sell bees. We do a few installations, but primarily we're honey. We're hitting every festival, and that's really where I met you, and how our business has evolved, and and then fast forward to 2020, we were cranking great, and then obviously COVID hit, and in my head I'm like, well, bees don't get COVID, so we're buffered.
Sure.
Festivals do, and our festivals just our income stream was gone.
Yeah.
And so we had to get creative during COVID, and actually we were able to buffer it and think of creative ways to do things. And
such as what?
Our biggest thing is we've partnered with Southeast Bullock and the band boosters, and every year they do a big honey sale to raise money for the band. So that's one big thing that we're real active with schools. We try and help as many schools in the area as we can with either going to festivals or donations or things that we can do. And Southeast Bullock Band really helped us during that first real bad festival season in COVID, because they just went gangbusters and sold honey like crazy.
Yeah.
And every year, ever since then, we do that. And we've done other couple schools that the SEB has referred us to other county schools that do us for fundraisers. But festivals are back, and really during COVID, it really kind of I saw how the vendors were treated. These festivals would just cancel and take the chance. They would take the
registration fee.
Well, what happened is all the insurance went up for these festivals.
Sure.
And I understand where the festivals are coming from. So if it was a booth fee of $90, they might have had to have gone up to $150 to cover their insurance cost. So their insurance agents were going up on their rates because of COVID. Well, instead of giving the vendors the chance to, hey, I'll just pay the $150, to compensate it, they just canceled the festivals. And there was no government really, support for the small festival community, vendor community. So we started saying, hey, we need to come up with like a group of vendors where we kind of control our own destiny. And I'm a couple years late, but my plan initially was to get every vendor that I know, because we've met hundreds of them over the years, and we start building basically like a co-op. And the ultimate goal is for us to have 100 or 200 vendors, arts and crafts, food trucks,
yep.
Everything, where we can kind of control our own destiny. So when these festivals pop up, we can go to a festival and say, hey, I got 100 vendors.
Yep.
But we want a discount.
Yeah.
I know it's
economies
normal.
of scale.
That's right. We'll come in and we'll come in. Well, I've got every type segment you want. We come in. We're not going to pay $75. We'll pay $60.
Yeah.
Per booth or whatever. And so that kind of leads us into what we've done now is we've got our first festival that we planned.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Tell me about the festival.
So we're doing the Grape Festival. It'll be August 26th at the Twin Oaks Vineyards.
Okay.
Which is the old winery off of 46, and It's off of Sinkhole Road and 46.
How far is that from Statesboro?
It's 8 minutes.
Okay.
8 minutes from. It's over on the register side.
Why grapes?
Well, so actually Marvin Deal, who's the owner of Twin Oaks, he actually is one of my customers for bees, and I've known Marvin my entire life, and his family owns Deal's Heating and Air, and he loves bees, and he's been a good supporter of our business, and but his bees are out. His bees are out there at Twin Oaks, and it's an absolutely beautiful venue, and I've told him, I said, well, we need to have a festival out here. I mean, it's beautiful. I mean, wide open, flat area. We could pack vendors in. We could have a big festival. Well, the grapes are. He kept, even though the winery is not there, the vineyard is still there.
What winery was there before?
I forget the name of it.
Was it muscadine wine?
Yeah. So
like
they
the
would do
sweet, right?
Yeah, and it closed up a few years back, and all the winery equipment's gone out of it, and now it's a wedding and special event venue.
That's awesome.
But so finally we're like, let's do it. We've been playing around with this for a couple of years. Let's do it. So myself and some other vendor friends of ours, and we're in the process of getting it organized now. And the reason we're doing a grape festival is because August 26th is when all the grapes will be ready to pick.
Okay.
So basically the grapes are the anchor for the festival.
Okay.
So all of our customers or patrons who come to the festival can pay $10 and go through the vineyards and pick their own grapes.
That's awesome.
So it's free admission, free parking. There'll be a massive kid zone. It's going to be very much a kid family festival. We've got 6 bouncy houses, a slip and slide, hay ride, live music, 8 food vendors, hopefully saucy included.
Saucy shrimp.
That's
Let's
right.
go.
So it's going to be a good time. So
yeah. So for the grapes, they are what type of grapes? They are all still muscadine?
they're all muscadine.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you go to this festival, you'll be able to. It's all you can pick.
It'll be a basket.
Basket.
A gallon basket.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then you can pick. How long does that usually take to pick that?
Depends on what your energy level is.
How quickly
Yeah,
you can pick.
yeah,
Can you pick it full within like a certain amount of time?
To
No
be honest
idea.
with you, I've never picked grapes, but I'm assuming I'm assuming you could.
That's so much fun.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And then I'm assuming there's enough grapes to.
Oh yeah.
To last
acres and acres of grapes.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. What are the grapes doing right now? Like, is it being produced in any sort of way?
So they've already bloomed. They've already started producing. So
Okay.
yeah, it takes a good couple months for them to mature out.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Describe to me, and what I love about this is you start by creating kind of like some value for your business, but then you also figure out a way where you can create a sense of community within kind of like the other vendors that are part of the community, and then now you're executing on kind of creating like the infrastructure in which like you can bring these vendors to a location where it's very much about like, hey, these are the people that have gone through thick and thin with me, and now like there's this opportunity for them to kind of like thrive. Love the fact that you were putting on like a festival. That's amazing. Where do you think the entrepreneurial spirit comes from? Like, how have you kind of like been able to create value through the hobbies and activities that you do?
So I'll tell you, I have to give a lot of the credit to my upbringing and just my life story. My family is blue collar kid. We're originally from Chicago, hence the name DiNello, but we moved here in the late 70s when I was little. So I've grown up in Bullitt County. And my first job was at RJ's Steakhouse. And,
wow.
Randy Neesmith was a tremendous mentor for me. The king of entrepreneurship. A steakhouse, seafood, steak and seafood in Bullitt County and in Statesboro, and so being under him for 9 years of my life, and my brother, who was the general manager,
he also worked there.
He also worked there. He's Randy's son-in-law.
Okay.
And so having them as mentors and just work ethic, and it steered me towards hotel restaurant management as a degree, and in college at Georgia Southern, and so it's just all I've ever known is work. And for me getting into beekeeping, it was, well, it's fun and it's relaxing. People laugh at me when I say that, but it is very fulfilling to do beekeeping. But it is also nice to turn a profit. So
let's go back and talk about Randy for a second. He's one of the powerhouses, especially in the restaurant industry, during a time when Statesboro wasn't really blooming in terms of like the different types of restaurants that were in the area.
Right.
What do you think about, and you mentioned that he was a mentor to you. What do you think made him a great mentor?
He was the best I've ever seen at customer service and customer relations. I was a manager of his assistant manager when I got older. I was still a kid, but if there was a problem, they wanted Randy Neesmith. And even though I might have had the answers and I could have fixed it, but it was everybody knew that Randy would fix it. And his community relations and what people thought of him, because he is such a great man, and it was good seeing how there was never anybody who thought ill of Randy, which is good. And it's like, yeah, I want to be like Randy. So and I've kind of, now that I'm 48, I kind of pride myself as
trying to channel that energy.
Hey, what are people going to think about me when I'm no longer here? Hey, Ed was a good guy.
I love that. What you're talking about is really reputation, right? And Randy did have a phenomenal reputation.
That's right.
In developing that. And so I guess one of the questions I would have in here is like, I guess, how does one shape one's reputation, right? Like, this channel is really meant for entrepreneurs that are growing, and regardless of if you're in beekeeping or whatever industry that you're in, your reputation is absolutely critical. So how does one shape?
I'll tell you, beekeeping is a good example of reputation, because like we have customers who pay us to take care of their beehives. So I can't just, so beekeeping is one of those things that really kind of stinks, because you have to do beekeeping when the weather is good and it's warm. So it's usually spring and summer and early fall. We're working beehives. Well, your kids and your family and your friends are all going to ball games and going to the park and going on boating trips, and it's like, well, I got to work bees.
Yeah.
So reputation and work ethic and integrity are it's a good example. Beekeeping is a good example of that, because my wife, and my family, it's like, it might be 11 o'clock on a Saturday. I got to go fix Adam's hives.
Yeah.
There's a problem. I got to go check them. So, I've got customers who rely on me to take care of their bees, and you can't just go, well, I'll get to it next week, because bees don't wait.
That's right.
Bees have a cycle that, you're on a timeline. If there's a problem, you've got to fix it in a certain amount of time, or you're going to lose the hive.
Yeah.
So you can't just put it off. I'll get to it next week. So that reputation is important with our line of work.
Yeah.
And with festivals.
Sure.
If we commit to festivals, whoever's organizing that festival, I can't just go, well, it's kind of a pretty day today.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go. Or, hey, the weather's not good. I'm not. I committed. I told that festival, organizer we would be there. Our customers are expecting us to be there, and there's been plenty of times I'm sitting in 35-degree weather, it's like, oh man, this weather's horrible for April or whatever. And, there was a festival that, it wasn't 35, but it was like maybe 48 and rainy. And it was like, my feet were wet and I was sitting in the rain, and I was there, and so it's all about building that name recognition. And,
I tie that back to in some certain ways back to the service industry through restaurants, right? Like in a restaurant, our busy days are, your Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That's when the business comes in, because that's when most people, a majority of people, have the time to go out and eat.
That's right.
And it creates a position where, like, if you are trying to go out, or if you're trying to have, like, a life, it's definitely a different lifestyle. And I think that experience within kind of like the restaurant industry eventually led you to a point where, hey, look, like, whatever it takes to get the job done. I've personally have started businesses with people that come out of the restaurant industry simply for the fact that I know if they are successful in the restaurant industry that I can rely on them.
That's right.
That reliability is huge, right? Being able to depend on someone. And I think to a certain extent that has altered, right, the current culture of people that are working in this day and age.
That's right.
Have started to shift, and you see it in the restaurant industry. I don't know if you see it in bees necessarily, but what do you think has led us to this point, right? I think to a certain extent it's a challenge that we are facing right now of like having a labor force that's willing to be dependable.
We see it like with our supply chain. You don't think about it, but we have things we have to have for our business, bottles and jars and lids, and there were hiccups where it was just like someone we relied on for a key item like jars. They just up and said, we're not selling jars anymore.
Completely.
I mean, put us in a tailspin. And I mean, and as simple as we are, I can only imagine, an operation the size of yours, but it was jars. And we were, what are we going to do? I mean, we have to have jars. Our labels fit a certain size jar. We've got thousands of dollars in labels, and now we can't get a jar.
Up in smoke.
Yeah, we're about to hit festival season. We have no jars, and it was a nightmare. And it was a lot of it was these companies didn't have enough employees to make that bottle or that jar, and they just cut it out of their production line. The company we bought it from was like, we don't have the people to house it or whatever it was. And so work ethic is very important in every aspect of everything you do. And you don't think about it with beekeeping and selling honey, but a small business like ours, we've had hiccups where we've really had to think outside the box and make adjustments. And, when I was trying to find another beekeeper, because I knew what the bee's needs was going to be and what my limitations were, and what I could devote to the business. And I said, I got to get another beekeeper. I said, I can't do all of this. I can't be that one-man band with the, harmonica and the drum and the, playing the guitar, and, I couldn't do it. So, but I went through 5 or 6 people that were gung-ho, I want to do this, and it just didn't work out.
Yeah.
And finally, found, Carrie Olson, and she was a customer, and who I met her at a festival, and she great interest in bees, didn't know anything about them, but had a horticultural background, which was good, because I don't. And I met her about 3 or 4 years ago as a customer, set up her beehives, and I said she wanted to learn, and all of a sudden she's like, I'd like to join the team, and it was the best thing I've done for the business was, it was hard for as the owner and originator of the business. It's always hard to go, hey, do I want to give up some ownership? Do I want to give up some control and income? Split profits and all that good stuff. And it's like, well, it's either give up some control and income, or the whole business could fall apart because it was, it was growing and growing and growing, and I couldn't commit to growing it by myself. And but trying to find someone who had that work ethic, it was a nightmare. I could not imagine if I had to get 50, keep 50 people staffed or 100 or. Now the one saving grace I do see is with my teenage boys, they're hitting the the employment market now. The work ethic is strong. So I'm thinking
in them.
Yes.
Okay.
And their friends too. A lot of them are just too young to work because they're that 14, 15-year-old age.
Yeah.
They can't drive and things like that. But my 15-year-old just started a lawn care service. He
really
wants to work. But
where does that come from? Because I do see. It's interesting that you say that because at the same time there is that your kids are kind of like there in work, and I have to say that that's probably in their upbringing, right? Like you have laid down this path of like, hey, like this is what my role is, and this is what I'm going to do in order to achieve that goal or whatever it is that you set out to do. They see that and they're mimicking it. what do you think in their kind of like upbringing are you doing to allow them to have that type of work ethic?
I think every parent wants their kids to be more successful and more educated and have an easier life than they had, and I mean it was I had a good upbringing, love wise and family support, but we were lower middle class, but work ethic was always taught in our household, and it's real easy to look at my kids, and my kids have it much easier than I had it. They've had a better leg up, with gadgets and the first cars and things like that. But you still have to kind of keep it tempered and make them understand it's not a free ride. It's not just because you want it, you're going to get it. Hey, you're going to have to go cut the grass. You need to go get a job. And the thing I did with our boys, the older boys, is I'll never forget it. It was like a spring break, and they literally sat on the couch for an entire weekend playing their iPads or whatever they had 10 years ago. And I said, no. I said, y'all are going to do something. And I said, you have to pick the same activity.
The two of them,
because they're 20 months apart.
Okay.
I said, you have to pick the same activity because I'm not going to be driving you one to soccer and one to baseball. And I said, you have to pick the same one. You're going to do it together. And they couldn't decide. And we were sitting eating at a Mexican restaurant, and there was a flyer for a dojo.
Yeah.
I said, you're taking martial arts.
Yeah.
And I
did both of them want it?
They didn't want it, but I made them. And the older boy, Michael, he took to it like a fish in water.
Sure.
And black belt, loved it.
Yeah.
My second, the younger one, Murray, he doesn't really handle like kind of like somebody coming down on him.
Sure.
He kind of shuts down. And I had to drag him kicking and I said, you're gonna get your black belt.
Yeah.
And I've always told them you have to do something, whether it's athletics or a job, and you have to do something. You can't just not participate and just sit there idle mind, devil's workshop kind of thing. And so Michael, once he got through karate and he was old enough to start baseball then, and both of them went into baseball at their schools. And Michael he'll be a senior next year. He's travel baseball and he works a little bit, but he's doing baseball, so he's doing something. And then Murray, he tried baseball and wasn't really for him, and now he started his own business. And I said, you know what? You're starting your own business. You're doing something.
Yeah.
So that's really I set that expectation that they couldn't just sit around and do nothing, that you have to contribute, whether it's babysitting your younger brother and sister or doing yard work. A couple of years ago, I gave them the yard. I said, the yard's yours.
Yeah.
I said, I'll fund you all the equipment you need, but I don't have time to cut the grass. And
put them to work.
Put them to work. And it's like the yard is yours. You keep the grass cut. You weed eat. But I think it's really how you set the expectation. And
what bothered you about seeing them on their iPad for you, like specifically?
There was no interaction, no social interaction at all, and with anybody. And it was just literally it was like 3 days of. I just was like, they've done nothing. They've done nothing. And, me as a kid, and probably you too, if the sun was up, you were outside, summertime or break time, we were outside playing. We didn't come home until it started getting dark, and kids don't do that anymore, something got under my skin. I was like, we're not setting this, I'm not going to have them the next 10 or 12 years, as they grow up.
That's right.
Just socially and disconnected.
Yes, right.
So
right. I think that's huge. I mean, being able to really put a stop to it, right? And not to say that there's anything wrong with technology, but I do think that we're in this day and age where we're so driven by what's happening on our phones everywhere, right? Like regardless if you're on the road or whatever it is, it's such a important device to us. But being able to have, especially the youth, be able to disconnect and also do something maybe productive, I think it brings a ton of value.
Right.
let's get back to the bees, if
Yep.
you will. One thing that we discussed a little bit earlier was finding the right person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Finding the right person to help you. And I think that's a critical skill as an entrepreneur. Building your business, if you don't find the right people, you're not able to really grow your business at all, because you're going to be running around doing, all the tasks. Everything's on you.
Mm-hmm.
When in reality, as an entrepreneur, you're supposed to be able to paint the vision and guide the ship, be able to see where there's danger areas and become creative. What do you look for in an individual, right? Like, is there something that, comes to mind of like the type of person that you want on your team?
So I'll tell you what I look for is, and what I looked for was work ethic. And it was finding somebody that wanted to learn,
Mm-hmm.
but would also learn in a timely manner.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm a repetitive instructor. So when I've got somebody, and we teach beekeeping too. So if you were a student and you were learning beekeeping from us, I'm very repetitive. I say the same things over and over, just kind of drill it in, very subtly, just same thing. But when I'm looking for a partner or a coworker, but it's really a partner because we're not big enough, we don't have employees. I was looking for somebody that was, after a certain time, it's like, hey, you need to go do this, this, and this,
Mm-hmm.
and I know it's going to get handled.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's been good about the business is, as we've evolved, certain people in our family or in the business do certain things. So, there's certain things that I primarily do now, and there's certain things that like Carrie will do automatically. And then certain things that, my father-in-law is Dr. Bray, and he likes to spin the honey. So our honey house is on his land. So I'll say, hey, we'll have the honey ready to spin, and he'll set the spinner, and he's great at it, So, and that's hours that saves us, because he's right there and he can just spin the honey while he's having dinner, and it's already ready to go for us the next day. So, the kids, my wife, so really it's work ethic and being able to, me as the originator and the visionary of what the bee's knees could be. Now that we've kind of delegated responsibilities. The biggest thing is being open to constructive criticism, or hey, we've been doing this a long time. If we do it this way, it'll save us time, or to be more profitable, or we can expand our business, or whatever. So it's nice having different points of view. Where it's like, okay, I can see that. Initially you're like, nope, we started this way, we're doing it this way, and
Sure.
And I didn't want to be like that with the business, because you've got to, with us being primarily festivals, 75-80% of our revenue is festival driven. You've got to reinvent yourself. So we've had to add new types of honey, or new venues, things that we have to kind of step outside the box, and bigger venues that we didn't normally do. Different things that we offered, that were bee related.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had to kind of get creative and make sure we're on trend with as on trend as you can be with honey
Sure.
and bees. So it's been fun. It's been fun to reinvent ourselves and be kind of cutting edge with as we can be with bees and honey.
What's been the most challenging part of beekeeping?
The time. It's exceptionally time consuming.
Mm-hmm.
Having a family and a full-time career, because the bee's knees is a part-time business. So having the time to do it the way I want it to. I mean, if and most beekeepers, I'm 48. Most beekeepers are not. I'm a kid with beekeepers. Typically, it's an older hobby, and because of the time thing, it's hard to juggle a young family, a career, and time with your spouse.
And what makes it so time intensive?
It's tough. I mean, you're talking. We have 150 beehives, which it's not a lot, but it is a lot. But like big apiaries might have 6,000, 10,000.
Wow.
There's an apiary in Vidalia that has 25,000.
Wow.
They've got 25 full-time beekeepers. in season. So it's just time consuming because there's so many things you have to do. You're moving hives, you're moving bees, you're pulling honey, you're treating hives, you're flipping boxes, you're driving. You have to drive from area to area because you can't just put 200 beehives on 10 acres of land.
You can't.
There's not enough food.
Oh, okay.
You can't oversaturate it because there's not enough food for the bees.
How many beehives can live in a specific area?
The rule of thumb is about a hive per acre. It really depends.
Single hive?
Yeah. A single hive can have 50, 60, 70,000 bees in it. If our beehives are big. We run
How big are they?
4 or 5 boxes deep.
Wow.
When they're full strength.
Yeah.
When they're full of honey, and now as winter comes, you force them down.
Yeah.
Because the bee population dips. There's not as many bees in the wintertime because they don't need them.
Yeah.
So, but our beehives are much larger than the average beekeeper because we're 100% honey driven.
Okay.
So our bees are kind of just stationary, and we let them go and work their magic. And so once we find a good spot for bees, we'll load that area up, and that's where they stay.
Yeah.
A lot of beekeepers move their bees around for different pollination jobs, or they might go up north, or they might go out west. We're not set up to do that. So.
If somebody wanted to get into this business, what advice would you have them? For them? Don't. It's like restaurants, right? I feel like there's like,
I have lots of people that want to get into. So I'll tell you what technology has done a disservice to is with beekeeping, and it's probably like that with anything. But you have YouTube and Facebook and all Snapchat and Instagram, and it's look how easy it is. They turn a knob, they turn a switch, and the honey just flows out of the hive.
Yeah.
No.
That's how it works, right?
No.
Come on.
And so I usually will. I'm not like a doom and gloom guy.
Sure.
Because I don't like those beekeepers, but I let people know, hey, why don't you come work bees before you decide? Now we have if anybody gets bees from us, we have them come work bees with us before we give them their bees. Because you
can show them the ropes,
the basics at least. Because when I first got into beekeeping, I had my 4 beehives, and all of a sudden I had 100,000 bees, 200,000 bees in 4 hives.
Swarming around,
and it was what do you do? So like social media and the internet has really made it look easier than it is. It's kind of like a cooking show where look how easy it is.
Chop, chop, chop.
And look, he just took the pie out of the oven. It's perfect. So beekeeping is very much the same way.
Yeah.
It's so I let them know the challenges, and I'll tell you a good example is my first year. Wintertime is usually when you lose beehives. They just don't make it. I mean, they're animals. Things will happen.
Yep.
So I had 16 beehives after my first year. Okay, I started with 4, but I split, caught swarms. All of a sudden I had 16 beehives. That's where the expense comes in, because all of a sudden you've got to buy more equipment, and so your initial investment really is just the initial investment. Now you're buying boxes, and you're buying this, and you're expanding, because bees aren't goldfish. They don't stay where they're at.
Yeah.
They grow. Bees make honey, and they make bees. That's all they do. That's their whole life. Well, they don't just go, hey, Adam did a good job for us. We got these 3 beautiful boxes, and they're painted, and they've got decorations on the outside. Look at the beautiful orchard out front. We're fine.
Yeah.
No, they keep making bees, they make honey, and they swarm.
Sure.
Okay. So there's nothing worse than for a young beekeeper when you come home from work and you look up in a tree and there's $200 worth of bees sitting up in a tree.
Oh, geez.
Because they swarmed out of your hive.
Yeah.
So you have to put them in a box, and all of a sudden you had 1 hive, and now you got 2, and then you make it through winter, you got to split your hives, and then you had 2 that came out of winter, now you got 4. So it's anyway. So I had my 16 hives or so going into winter, my first year. It was 12. I had 12 hives. I go into winter, and the guy that taught me beekeeping, he was like, "You're gonna have hives that die." I was like, "Not me." So I'm good.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, I'm first year beekeeper.
Sure.
I was like, "No, mine are all strong, healthy."
Yeah.
And man, I had my strongest hive just die.
Why?
Like dead. Moisture. Hive. It took on some moisture, and
just
in the wintertime, yeah. Moisture's so wintertime. Wintertime here is bad for bees because of the moisture, because we have so much humidity, and we have mild winters. Mild winters are bad because they eat all their food, so there's nothing for them to eat So you have to feed them in the wintertime. But that being said, it was like I lost my dog.
Yeah.
I was heartbroken that I lost that beehive. It was,
Yeah.
and I let people know that. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, you're going to have a beehive that dies.
Yeah.
And you don't want to start with one hive. You want to start with 2 or 3.
Uh-huh.
And they go, I'm just going to get one. Like, you're going to have heartbreak.
Yeah.
The odds of that one hive surviving as a first-year beekeeper is slim and none. So have a couple so you can fix mistakes and you have resources to fix things. And so once they're dead set on it, say, okay, well, you need to come learn the basics.
Uh-huh.
And that's where we mentor them as best we can and
Set them off.
to the world of beekeeping.
I love that. There's been a lot of media about the importance of bees for pollination.
Correct.
Is that something that we as a community still need to be conscious of? Is that something that is really prevalent?
It very much is. I went to another beekeeper friend of mine in Metter. I went to one of his classes, and he had a guest speaker there who was a old-time beekeeper from Pennsylvania or somewhere, big apiary. And the things that are being put in our food by the companies, things that are now in nature that are not natural, that are man-made elements that are really wreaking havoc on the ecosystem. And he brought up a good point. He said, when was the last time you were riding down the interstate and you just hit big pockets of insects?
You
don't. Because the things that they're putting in the pesticides and the herbicides mainly are wiping out the insects. And what it is I forget the name of it, and forgive me, I'll have to get back to you on it. But there's a chemical they put in it, and it really targets hive insects, and it makes them to where they don't know how to coalesce together. So like bees and termites and ants and things like that have to have a central structure to survive.
Sure.
A bee by itself is useless.
Yeah.
What makes a bee formidable is there's 50,000 sisters.
Yeah.
They're all women. So we call them girls or sisters, aside from the drones. But so if they're not coalescing and a strong collective, they're really insignificant and can't survive. So if you start messing with the way bees can communicate and how they feed and how they survive, it'll mess them up. So that's where the theory of hive collapse is coming from. Is the pesticides and the herbicides are so detrimental now to the ecosystem for mainly bees. Without bees, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
So if it's a fruit or vegetable, it's good chance it was a bee that made it grow.
Yeah.
And you start taking the bees out of the ecosystem. I've got a lot of customers that come and buy honey. Like, I don't see bees in my garden anymore.
Yeah.
It's just because they're not around anymore.
That's right.
And if there's not bees in your garden, there's not any for 3 miles because they'll travel for 3 miles. So it's been. Our business has been good because we've got people that put beehives. It's really neat because you'll have someone say, "Well, everybody's got their own thing. Why they'll want bees?" You've got the people who, the naturalists, the green people. I want bees because they're so valuable to our ecosystem.
Yep.
Okay. They don't really care about anything else. They want to have bees so they know they're doing their part for nature. Okay. Then you got the people. I'm a honey person. I want the honey. You know? You got some people, it's like, I just think it's exciting. I think it's so neat what they do. So you've got all kinds of walks of life, and it's really cool because like beekeeping, religious orientation, social orientation, political orientation, it's all gone. It's about the bees.
Yeah.
And that's what's really cool about beekeeping. It's very much just a collective. We're doing good for humanity.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
What's the future of the company look like? Where do you hope to take it?
I think the next venture for us is getting the festival co-op going, because I think we want to kind of start having our own festivals that we're kind of organizing.
Sure.
Because like for us, we've kind of maxed out what we can physically do festival-wise, because there's only so many weekends in a year. There's only so many of us that can do. We can pull off 2 big festivals in the same weekend. Kind of like food trucks.
Sure.
How many festivals can you do? How many
That's
events? We can pull off 3 if one's a small one. But then you have to start relying on a labor force. Because like myself, either my wife can handle a festival, or I can handle a festival, or our partner can handle a festival. But some festivals you have to have 2 or 3 people there.
Sure.
And so really festival-wise, we're probably maxed out. We're probably going to start doing some bigger things like the SEB band boosters. That's a big event for us. So start thinking creatively with the honey. But I think the next avenue for us would be starting to organize festivals because we want to. The Great Festival is going to be big for us. I think it's going to be big for the community. It's going to be good for vendors.
Yep.
And we're basically using it to get a network because we've got vendors signing up from all over the area. And our ultimate goal is to be able to go to, say, a small town in the area and say, hey, why don't we start doing a festival?
I love it.
We got 50, 60 vendors. All we need is a space, a park, whatever.
That's right.
And we'll advertise, what is your town known for? Okay, we're known for whatever.
Yeah.
Collard greens. We'll do a collard green festival, So we'll do something that little town is known for, that church or that whatever. And we could even do it like, hey, we're going to organize it around, say, a charity.
Sure.
We could say, hey, let's do a big festival, and a certain portion of the proceeds go to, United Way or a local charity or whatever it is. And we can start doing that. So like with this festival, Grape Seed, or the Grape Festival, there's a new coach at Statesboro High School for the baseball team. And he was like, we had the parent meetings, like, hey, I'm looking for ways for the boys to earn money for the team. I called him. I said, hey,
got it.
We're going to hire you guys. So there'll be 30 of the Statesboro High baseball team guys out there for the festival. They'll be manning the wristbands for the bouncy houses. They'll be parking cars. They'll be there to help set up and break down tents, and they'll take donations.
Yep.
So they'll have a booth that they can accept donations for the baseball team, and so we're trying to do as much as we can for the community. With we really like to help schools. We're big with the public schools. So
I think entrepreneur has different ways that business kind of like shows itself to the world. What's great about your story is that there's so much good that comes from it, right? Regardless of if it's from the bees or if it's from this festival or whatever it is that you do, I think there's the intentionality behind it that really wants to just put good into the world.
Sure.
Business is business, right? The business has to make money. The business has to, be able to kind of like move. But I think outside of what the money, I think that the good that an entrepreneur can do is really being able to show the world what a business can offer.
Right.
And what's fascinating about your story and everything that I've heard today is really like that you are doing that specific thing of putting good into the world. So for that, I thank you. Thank you for coming onto the show. Thank you for sharing kind of like your experiences. And we'll be looking forward to getting down and dirty with the bee's knees.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.